Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of EBC Sports International. I'm your host, Zarita Sessing, reporting from Toronto, Canada. We have a jam-packed show this week, so before we get started, like always, let's see who's joining me this week. From Washington, D.C., we have Ken Cruz, who I'm going to ask, what did you bring for show and tell today, Ken?
For show
He doesn't have anything.
He actually don't have one.
Oh, I mean, like I thought about it, but I do have this Devin Ebanks card always here. This is thanks to Jolty. It has an actual piece of his jersey on here. So
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Devin Ebanks,
Of course.
Lakers legend.
Something LA related, of course. And from Alexandria, Virginia, we have Mr. EJ Gonzalez.
What's up, everyone? We got a full house today, man. I'm excited. I'm excited to talk some sports with you guys.
And from Bowie, Maryland, I got that right, Jeremy?
Bowie.
We have Jeremy Canlas.
Hello, everyone.
And certainly, but not least, my neighbor, my literal neighbor, we have Adian Pangilinan.
Hey, what's up, guys? Happy opening weekend to Space Jam. This is LeBron James. You should get in a Happy Meal.
Wow. Yeah, your Canadian Happy Meals are pimped. Those are really nice.
That.
Yes, sir.
Make sure you keep that. It might go up.
I got it right by my DeAndre Ayton bobblehead.
Can you send one of those over here? I'll pay for the Happy Meal.
No problem.
So I want to thank the panel for joining me this week. And again, we just want to remind you, though we do love talking about sports, we are by no means experts, rather just some fans who think we have opinions that matter. So now let's get started with some sports news. First up, we have EJ on the recent news on the Team USA men's basketball team.
Yep. So the Tokyo Olympics is 1 week away, but there has been a sudden change in the roster for the men's USA basketball team. On Wednesday, Team USA's Bradley Beal and teammate Jeremy Grant were placed on the health and safety protocols list. And out of an abundance of caution, the exhibition game between the US and Australia today was canceled, but their final exhibition game with Spain on Sunday is still a go for the moment. Yesterday, Beal was officially ruled out for the Tokyo Olympics. Then suddenly today, Kevin Love made the decision to withdraw from the team after experiencing a setback on his pre-existing right calf injury. Now, earlier this week, Team USA dropped 2 consecutive exhibition games, first to Nigeria, then to Australia. Now, this was the first time the US lost back-to-back games since before the assembly of the Dream Team in 1992, where professionals were first allowed to play for Team USA. Now, the loss of Bradley Beal is a devastating blow for Team USA, as Beal started all 3 of the exhibition games for the red, white, and blue and was the second leading scorer in the regular season for the NBA at 31.3 points per game. Head coach for Team USA, Greg Popovich, said that they are devastated for Beal, who expressed that playing for the Olympic team has been a childhood dream of his. Team USA has added JaVale McGee and Keldon Johnson to the 12-man roster in place of Bradley Beal and Kevin Love. JaVale McGee, a 3-time NBA champion, adds some needed size that Team USA has exposed themselves of lacking during the exhibition game. And Keldon Johnson, who is a player for the San Antonio Spurs, has been playing with the Olympic team as a USA Select player. Johnson is said to be one of the favorites of the coaching staff and has proven to be well-conditioned. And let's not forget, Jrue Holiday, Chris Middleton, and Devin Booker will be part of the roster, but they're battling it out right now for an NBA title. Back to you, Zarita.
Thanks, EJ. So we're definitely going to dig deeper into that in our discussion later on. But now we're going to head over to Adian for some UFC updates.
Yes, thank you, Zarita. In a weekend where we had the Copa America Finals, the Euro Cup Finals, Wimbledon Finals, and NBA Finals, perhaps the biggest story of the weekend was UFC 264. In the main event, we saw Dustin Poirier take on Conor McGregor for the trilogy fight at a sold-out T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. All eyes were on the pair of fighters in what was a promising fight due to the ill nature between the two. McGregor started the fight with 2 spinning back kicks, and the fight was mostly back and forth until McGregor attempted a guillotine chokehold, which made him vulnerable to Poirier's ground and pound. It was there where Poirier dominated most of the first round until McGregor got back up to his feet. With only a few seconds left in the round, McGregor attempted a kick, which ricocheted off Poirier's elbow, and it seemed to have fractured McGregor's leg. And when McGregor attempted a punch, his leg gave out and he collapsed to the ground. The round ended and McGregor did not get back up. thus ending the fight as a TKO win for Poirier, doctor stoppage. McGregor had broke the lower portion of his left tibia and left the fight on a stretcher and underwent surgery the very next day. President of the UFC, Dana White, seemed optimistic about his return and thinks a fourth fight is possible once McGregor returns in roughly 1 year. For Poirier, this automatically puts him in contention for the lightweight championship, where he'll take on the Brazilian grappler, Charles Oliveira. Although the fight has not officially been announced, it's likely we'll see that bout before the end of the year. Back to you, Zarita.
Thanks, Adrian. And lastly, we have some updates regarding free agent cornerback Richard Sherman.
Yeah, thanks, Rita. So Richard Sherman is currently in some pretty deep water as he pleaded not guilty to 5 charges today in connection with his arrest outside the home of his in-laws outside of Seattle. Sherman was charged with 2 counts of domestic violence, driving under the influence, resisting arrest, and endangering roadway workers. He appeared in the county courtroom with his wife, Ashley Sherman. All charges are misdemeanors, punishable up to 90 days in jail, or gross misdemeanors, which are punishable up to 1 year. Sherman is the vice president of the NFL's Players Association's executive committee and is next scheduled to be in court on August 13th for a pre-trial hearing. He said earlier today that he's been dealing with some mental health issues for the past few months. Sherman said, quote, "I'm deeply remorseful for my actions on Tuesday night. I behaved in a manner I am not proud of," end quote. Sherman was arrested after police said a man attempted to break into the home of Ashley Sherman's parents on Wednesday. Police also said the man crashed into a barrier in a construction zone before the attempted break-in. Sherman is currently a free agent after being released by the San Francisco 49ers last February. Back to you, Zarita.
Thanks, Ken. And that's all the sports updates that we have for this week. Time for a quick break. And when we return, we'll definitely jump into our discussion. We'll be right back.
Hey there, Arnie Aquino here at Hatley Castle, one of the filming locations for the X-Men series. Don't forget to tune in to Digital Nest only on Net 25.
Welcome back to EBC Sports International. I'm your host, Zarita. So like we usually do on the show, we're going to start off with our discussion with some of our favorite sports, NBA, of course. So the NBA Finals is all tied up now, 2 apiece, as the Milwaukee Bucks were able to win both of their home games. Giannis Antetokounmpo continues to his Finals MVP-worthy play, averaging 32.25 points per game so far, and had what most will call one of the best, if not the best, NBA Finals block in NBA history. On the other hand, the guards Devin Booker and Chris Paul continue to carry their young team throughout this series, with Booker putting up another 40-plus point game in Game 4. But like they always say, it's not a series until the road team wins. And now the series comes back to Phoenix for Game 5, where they're looking to bounce back from what some people are saying is a fairly odd Game 4 for them. So some are saying that Game 4 was one of the worst, if not the worst, performance by Chris Paul, where he had 10 points, shot for 5 for 13, and was responsible for 5 of the team's 17 turnovers. So, Adian, let's start off with you. How much blame do you put on Chris Paul for this loss?
I think the easy thing to do is blame it all on Chris Paul, but I truly believe that's not the case. If we're going to give a blame pie here, give him 80%. I think 10% goes to Devin Booker, and the other 10 goes to DeAndre Ayton, who just didn't score enough. Devin Booker balled out. Like, we can all agree to that, but he was in foul trouble. And because he wasn't available throughout a large portion of the third and fourth quarter, that load went on Chris Paul even more. Now, with that being said, Chris Paul had 5 turnovers, a big one in the final 30 seconds of the game where he lost it to Giannis Antetokounmpo on a switch. He never makes that turnover. He's a guy who had like 0 turnovers against who was guarding him in the last series. Patrick Beverly. He just doesn't turn the ball over much. And the fact that he's doing it in this round, it kind of gives you 2014 Western Conference Finals vibes when he was playing against the OKC Thunder as a member of the Clippers, and he turned the ball over and basically choked. So I think that's kind of the first impression you get. But at the same time, I think many of us are wondering, is he hurt? Is he not 100% for whatever reason? I think those are all kind of legitimate questions about him.
For sure. Follow-up question to that, though, Aiden, because you're giving blame pie. Do you put any blame then on Monty? Because people were questioning how he played Booker, especially late in the game where he was already starting to get into foul trouble.
I mean, the guy has executed as well as you possibly could as a coach. He's brought in the most that you can out of this group, and to say that to blame him for any of it, I would disagree with that all, because at the end of the day, this is Chris Paul's team. He's the main difference as to why this team made it to the finals, why they made it to the playoffs this season. So no, I don't give him much of the blame. Maybe 0.2% or something like that, but not much.
So now looking over to the Bucks then, EJ, I'm going to throw this question to you. So we've seen some consistency from Chris Middleton, which has been his issue so far. But in the finals, he has been consistent. But players like Drew Holiday, Brook Lopez continue to be MIA. But what do the Bucks need to do or keep doing in order to take the lead for the series?
It's all on Giannis's shoulders. It starts with Giannis. I mean, look, the guy, after that crazy injury that should have taken him out for the rest of the season, he finds out no ligament damage, and he's good to go. And he's been on a tear, like insane. He put up back-to-back 40-point games, and then last night he put up a huge 30-point game, 14 rebounds, I believe, something like that. And the dude gives it his all. And like you mentioned earlier, that block by Giannis, it's crazy. And his mentality is what's leading them for the Bucks. He said that there were some interviews afterward, right? They were talking about, hey, go talk me through the block. What was going through your head? And he just said, I think earlier today they asked, have you watched it again? And he was like, no, I mean, only during the film review. And he said, but that happened in the past. And when you talk about the past, that's your ego talking. That's his mentality about it. He's already looking forward to the next game, and he's ready to go on the attack again. It all starts with Giannis. And if Chris Middleton, I think this was a great game 4 for him to put up 40 points. Now he has the confidence to put that into gear in game 5 and game 6, which they'll really need. And then, yes, you talked about Drew Holiday and Brook Lopez not really scoring the ball, but Drew Holiday, I think, can get a lot of the credit for shutting down Chris Paul the last 2 games. He's been checking him from inbound to the other side of the court. He's been on his tail. So Drew Holiday is really making Chris Paul exert that effort. And if we look at the numbers for Chris Paul, it's been declining. 32 points for game 1, 23 game 2, then 19 points, and then 10 points in game 4. And he wasn't averaging many turnovers in the playoffs. I mean, this guy is known to be the point god, they say, but this guy had 9 turnovers in just the last 2 games. And I think a lot of that is credit to Drew Holiday. So whether Drew Holiday scores or not, he's doing a lot on the defensive end and pestering Chris Paul.
Yeah, sometimes the work that you're putting in for your team just doesn't show up on stats. But Ken, one thing I noticed with Giannis, and a lot of fans noticed, is like by 4 minutes into the game, all of a sudden he sits out. And then the last game he said, oh, it's because I had to take a tinkle. So do you believe I know he's trying to make a joke of it, maybe make light of things. Do you think something's going on there? Like some people are saying he's just way too pumped up for this.
Yeah, well, I think if there's anyone, I mean, like I sat into the first post-game interview with after the game 1 of the finals, and I've interviewed him in, like, I think it was like All-Star game a couple of years ago, and from now and then, like, he's extremely what's the word? He doesn't lie, he'll tell you it is what it is. And he'll literally just tell you what's on his mind. And I think he's like a very for a guy that's like one of the best in the world. He's like a child like a man-child. He's extremely innocent, and it's in a great way. I think it's refreshing, right? Versus like guys like Jordan and Kobe, who like during like the finals and even just like during the season, like you couldn't talk to him. But this guy will literally tell you what is on his mind. And I think that's what a lot of people appreciate about him. Whether you're a fan of him, of the team or not, like a lot of people are fans of Giannis because he's just upfront. And I when he said that, I honestly think that's what he meant. But back on EJ's point regarding what it takes for the Bucks to win, I don't think it's Giannis, because Giannis scored 40 plus in Phoenix on Game 2 and still lost. It has to be Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday. If the Bucks lost yesterday, Drew Holiday went 4 for 20. So he would have been the guy to put the true blame on. But yes, to Drew's defense, Drew locked up Chris Paul, and he knows that Chris Paul's wrists are currently injured, and you could see the guy like really hounding him and taking advantage of that. And that's why he had 5 turnovers yesterday in Game 4, is because Drew Holiday is hounding the guy. But they need to show up outside of the Deer District, because it's very apparent that these guys show up at home, and throughout the entire playoffs, like they're kind of like missing when they're on the road. So that's my 2 cents when it comes to who needs to show up: Middleton, Holiday.
For sure. So kind of wrapping up our portion for the NBA Finals, Jeremy, who do you have winning MVP if the Bucks win or if the Suns win?
Oh man, this is a tough one.
Loaded question.
For the Suns, because I feel like both teams have a dynamic duo. Obviously, for the Suns, I feel like everyone thinks it would be Devin Booker, right? But I feel like the X factor and the glue, like what Adian was saying, the person that brought him to the playoffs is Chris Paul. Chris Paul brought many teams to the playoffs, and he's brought them, in different, advanced in different ways. But I think for the Suns, it would have to be Devin Booker. He's killing it. He's scoring phenomenally, except on that last game where he passed that alley-oop. I feel like he shouldn't have done that. I feel like I personally feel like he should have taken that shot versus making the pass so that Giannis could have blocked it. Because Giannis can recover so quickly, I feel like Devin should have already had that in his mind, and he should have listened to Kobe and what he got tatted on his arm. He should have been legendary. So I feel like for the Suns, it would be Devin Booker. And for the Bucks, like everyone thinks,
you gotta.
But the X factor, like Ken was mentioning, is Chris Middleton. I feel like they would not be this far. Ooh. They probably would have lost to the Nets if Middleton was not on this team. But like everyone, fan favorite, Giannis. But I feel like the MVP would have to go to Chris Middleton, to be honest. But I feel like the world just knows that Giannis is going to get the MVP for sure.
I was going to say, you're making a lot of Bucks fans mad with that take, but go ahead, EJ.
I'm not even a Bucks fan, but the dude put up back-to-back 40-point games and then put up 30 points and 14 rebounds. Like, the guy is carrying the Bucks. You say, okay, they wouldn't have been there without Chris Middleton. This is true. They wouldn't have been in the playoffs if it weren't for Giannis. You know what I'm saying? So, like, to me, there's no way that Chris Middleton gets MVP after a 40-point performance in Game 4, as opposed to the Giannis giving everything he's got, despite hurting his knee and still putting up the numbers that he's putting. He's affecting the game both offensively and defensively.
If Giannis 60% free throw in the next couple games, then we'll give him the MVP.
Well, for sure, we have a series. We have a series on our hands, which we all love as basketball fans. But now let's look forward beyond the finals, as 3 players, like EJ mentioned earlier, will be joining the Team USA in Tokyo for the Summer Olympics. So since our last show, there has been a lot of news surrounding the favorites to win the gold medal. As of right now, Team USA is 1-2 in their exhibition games leading up to the Olympics, with Nigeria and Australia handing them their losses. So after the loss to Nigeria, it stirred up a lot of conversation as what this team is actually capable of. So, Ken, let's start with you. We were rooting hard for this team last couple of shows. What are your thoughts of the roster? Let's say prior to all the changes so far.
Yeah, I mean, this roster, as weak as it looks, is still the best roster overall. I mean, any team with KD on it is just that's just an OP team. Like, he plays great, not just for NBA ball, but for international ball. And I mean, and it's also hasn't seen 3 of the best. I mean, 3 of like the really strong, potentially starting players that are playing in the finals right now. I mean, the big concern obviously is, I mean, how much rest are they going to get? Are they going to actually pull through with it? I mean, it really depends on like how these next couple days work out with the finals. But I mean, if the 3, Devin Booker, Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, do follow through with their plans to show up, then I honestly think this, despite losing Bradley Beal, potentially Jeremy Grant, and Kevin Love, who was actually that was better for them to leave. If you saw him play against Argentina, JaVale McGee is a big pickup, is an upgrade, because I honestly think that but as far as like what your question, I think compared to the rest of the countries and teams, this team is still built better, and stronger and has more superstars compared to the rest.
So like Ken was saying, there are several players, not just for Team USA, but other countries that decline the invitation to play for their countries for the simple fact that their bodies need rest after the demanding schedules of the NBA. So Adian, do you think the NBA and their desire and their push to get back on track schedule-wise ended up hurting a lot of their players who had hopes for representing their countries?
For sure, because they've had 2 shortened off seasons in a row. There were a lot of question marks going into last season with the bubble if they would even be playing, and then more so this season with the late start, and now it's gone into July, which usually by this time we're experiencing free agency and talking about trades, and we're already two months into the off season before the Olympics start. So definitely the NBA's decision to push the schedule, have games more close together with less rest in between. Even the All-Star game being so close to all the games, it really did hurt the prospect of a lot of players going to the Olympics. Like, how good would Australia be if they had Ben Simmons? How good would what's that other team, Slovenia, be if they had some of their Slovenian players other than Luka Doncic? Like, there's just been too many injuries this year, and I think the focus has been health and safety of the players. And I have no argument against that. We've even seen in the WNBA, Liz Cambage, I don't know how to say her last name, Cambage, how do you say it? She had to step out from the Australian women's team as well, because she cited her reason as mental health. I think health has got to be the biggest priority here, especially with what's going on around the world.
No, for sure. And then EJ, to just wrap it up, what are your thoughts on kind of, what's transpired with their record, how they look on the court, and also just the lack of players available at this point?
Yeah, no, Team USA, I think, as Ken alluded to, I mean, I think the success in international ball starts with the centers. I mean, just look at Spain and their success with the Gasol brothers, right? Them adding JaVale McGee is actually a really good thing for Team USA. I mean, he's not the best. I don't think he would have been the best choice, but it is an upgrade from Kevin Love. And it's just funny that we're waiting for Devin Booker, Chris Middleton, and Drew Holiday, because like you say, one of them's gonna lose, two or one of them are going to be losing in the finals, right? Then you go the next week, to Tokyo, and you see the dude who took your
them.
championship from you every single game, like for the next 2 weeks, right? So it's like, I think that's going to be a funny scenario, and I don't know how that would affect the performance of either Devin Booker or the two Bucks players in Tokyo. But as Ken said, Team USA is the team to beat. They're too stacked, and Kevin Durant, put the Brooklyn Nets by themselves in there, they still would be the team to beat against every other country that's made it to the Olympics.
No, for sure. Well, the games that we have seen so far are just exhibition games, and thankfully don't mean too much when it comes to medal standings. So we'll definitely keep our eyes out on these guys as the Olympics progress. So don't go anywhere. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Kumanta, sumaya tayong lahat. Saya-saya.
Welcome back to EBC Sports International. Thanks for sticking with us. So continuing on with our favorite topic, the 2020-2021 season is set to wrap up in about a week. And the next thing that fans are looking forward to is the off season and the moves that different organizations are going to be making. So this off season will be a juicy one, given how many stars will be up for grabs, from the LA Clippers to the 76ers, and now of late, the Blazers. There are several names being thrown around as targets for teams trying to lure them in. So let's start with Ben Simmons, who has been in the hot seat even before their season ended in the second round against the Atlanta Hawks. So Jeremy, I'm going to start with you. Do you think the organization and even us as fans had put too much pressure on Ben Simmons, and it's a matter of changing our expectations for what he can actually do?
As a fan, no, I do not think so. I only say no because as a professional basketball player, I feel like you should be able to make free throws. Ben Simmons is a great player, and I was a huge fan of Simmons when he was at LSU. Entering the NBA, I was telling people he is going to be the next LeBron, and I'm saddened to say that he is far from it. Yeah, he's still young and he can mature and continue to work on his game, but one aspect needs to be his shooting. But to answer your question, no, I do not think we've pressured him enough. If not, I think we need to put more pressure on him so that he will work on his shooting, will work on his free throw game, so that he will, get that max salary deal that he's hoping for.
For sure. So we do have to keep in mind the 76ers honestly haven't had the greatest track record when it comes to fixing someone's shooting woes, aka Markel's faults. So Ken, what kind of organization do you think Simmons needs?
Yeah, so I mean, it's tough. He needs tough love, like what Jeremy said, where he needs, like, he's been coddled this entire time, right? Not just by the coaches, Brett Brown and Doc, but his crew. I mean, whoever he's training with, like, what are you guys working on, man? Like, this dude, like, okay, it's one thing if he was paid at minimum salary, where you're getting paid what, like 5 years, 20 million, but you know what his contract is? It's 5 years, 177 million. Like what kind of NBA player are you that you don't have, what the kids say, you don't have a shot that in your bag, like you have to have like at least some sort of go-to move. And when the playoffs happen, and this happens at every playoffs, the paint tightens, it's going to be packed, and he's not going to get those easy, like, fast break shots, that layups that or dunks that he gets during the regular season. And so, to answer your question, what kind of organization is he best suited for? It's an organization that has floor spacers, great shooters, and not someone that clogs the paint, a la Embiid, right? He needs to go to organization with like a mobile center that can shoot, like a Brook Lopez, right? So he's pretty much like a Giannis without a jumper. Giannis at least has a sweet mid-range / fadeaway that he can go to here and there, and like if like a 20% 3-point shooter, and that's what I respect about Giannis. Yeah, his 3-point shot is pretty trash, but he'll shoot it, and that's way more respectable than Ben Simmons, who like literally passed the ball because of the menace that Trae Young is in like a pivotal game 6. That was absolutely embarrassing, and that's what I feel. He has to go to an organization with shooters, and that's the only way that he'll thrive, honestly.
Just like name an organization that you think he'll be good for. What's ideal for him?
I mean, I think he'd be better off. He'd be better off with the Lakers if he could get it on the Lakers. And that's not me being a homer. That's me because like he would fall in line with LeBron. LeBron would be like, shoot the ball or get off the court. And I think that's true. That's what he needs to hear.
It's honestly it's accountability for him. I think the organization's not holding him accountable for the lack of training that he's doing. So this is how it ends up. So moving on to another big name that may be up for grabs. It was reported this week that Kawhi Leonard has undergone surgery for a partially torn ACL. And on top of that, it was reported that he didn't even tell the Clippers organization what he was doing. So we know how fickle Leonard is and his uncle Dennis when it comes to their trust with any medical staff. We saw it with the Spurs, we saw it with the Raptors. So Adian, what does this mean for Kawhi staying with the Clippers?
Rita, you just had to ask me about Kawhi, huh?
Yep.
Man, I got a lot to say about Kawhi, but I'm going to try to keep it simple. Kawhi Leonard is the hardest guy to understand in all of sports. What are his desires? What does he want to accomplish in this league? Is he a good teammate? Is he a bad teammate? Nobody knows anything about him. He's so mysterious. That's why I'm like, if I'm the Clippers, I don't think I want to give him a max extension. Because I don't know if he's going to show up in the playoffs. I don't know if he's going to want to play with his teammates. I don't even know if he is a good teammate. So I just think that there's going to be teams that are trying to attract him, but what they're getting is a guy who's very unreliable. Yeah, he has 2 Finals MVPs, but he's also quit on the Spurs. He's also quit on. Quit is the wrong word.
Just hanging, drying.
Yeah. He's left the Raptors.
Sorry. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so he's responsible for 3 dynasties ending, if you want to count the Heat, the Raptors, and the Spurs. So he's just a very difficult guy to understand. And if I'm Dallas, if I'm Miami, if I'm any big organization with a lot of money to spend this offseason, I don't know if I want to pay him for all 5 years. Like, the hope is that he turns out to be like Kevin Durant and how he bounced back this year. But what do we know from Kawhi Leonard? He doesn't talk to anybody. He's not on social media. He's just pure question marks. And so, yeah, I'm gonna pay him a lot of money, but I don't know if I want to pay him 5 years. I don't think I want to give him the super max. It's too complicated of a scenario for me. And I think the Clippers honestly would do better if they could potentially trade him.
Ooh, hot take. I think that's a hot take. You're one of the few that probably won't pay him. But oh man, okay. Lastly, it was reported today that the Portland Trailblazer star Damian Lillard, well, we know now that it might not be true, but was set to request a trade in the next couple of days, and he already addressed it, saying it's not true. But like EJ said, he also didn't deny that he wasn't open to a trade. So EJ, I'm going to go to you. What's the best landing spot for Lillard?
Right. So Lillard said, I'm not even fully sure of my commitment or I'm not really committed on my decision for the future. Right. So he don't know if he's going to be with the Portland Trailblazers. So let's talk now options for him to go. Right. Obviously, I think he needs to get out of the West. The West is just way too stacked. I don't see them finding any success over there. If he does stay with the Portland Trailblazers, somebody's got to go off that squad because, as he mentioned, after they lost to Denver, who didn't have Jamal Murray or Will Barton on the floor because of their injuries, he said, how are we losing to this team led by Jokic, who was the MVP, of course. But how did we lose to a team who doesn't have two of their starters? And this is the one year that they were really as healthy as they have been for the past several years. They had Nurkic there. CJ McCollum was also there helping. So like he knows there's no excuse. And he said himself that he doesn't at this point right now, the Trailblazers doesn't see them being a championship contender as constructed. So something has to change, whether it's the head coach or getting rid of a player, maybe CJ McCollum, to find a better partner for Damian Lillard. But if Damian Lillard were to get out of Portland, he has to go to the East. I think he was interested in the Knicks and the Heat. Knicks, I don't know. They haven't proven to me enough that they are going to be a contender next year. I think that they succeeded in a season where they just kind of caught the groove. And once a lot of players started seeing the excitement again in New York, that kind of fueled them. But they don't have that star player. Maybe they are. That's what they're missing, a Damian Lillard for that roster. They don't have a true star. I mean, Julius Randle, phenomenal. But I don't think he's an alpha, right? So they need somebody there for the Knicks. I think Knicks would be a great landing spot for him. And I think the Miami Heat would also be a great landing spot for him. They have a lot of young talent there. Jimmy Butler isn't he's the main guy, but he's proven that he doesn't need to be an all-star for them to be successful, right? Last year, it was kind of underwhelming for the Miami Heat. I think if they have a star like Damian Lillard, they would also thrive. So yeah, definitely get out of the West, and Knicks or Heat, pick any team there. He'll succeed in the East.
And I'm sure any team in the East will love to take him. So those are just a few big names that will be hitting free agency as of August 2nd. And so the league might look very different come the next season. So moving on to our next topic with, sorry, I lost my spot, with our next topic of baseball. So the MLB was able to host their 91st All-Star festivities in Colorado, which of course had the Home Run Derby and the All-Star game between the two leagues. So despite all the stars that were there, Shohei Otani was the one that everyone was talking about. So he's the first Japanese-born and the first player to start as a pitcher and leadoff hitter for the American League roster. So there were some comments made earlier prior to the All-Star events that a language barrier might be the hindrance to Otani being the future or the face of baseball. So Ken, do you think there's any truth to this?
Absolutely not. I mean, at the end of the day, the game speaks, and I mean the fandom behind this guy is already insane. I mean, it's like, imagine if he was in an actual good team. I mean, what I'm very sad about is yeah, I'm a Dodger fan, absolutely, right? I mean, I'm a homer. You see it behind me, but it's one of those things where like I don't dislike the Angels like how I dislike the Clippers, because they're in a completely different division, and it's a conference. I mean, and so it's one of those things where I feel like this guy is star power, and he already is. It's a bad team. It's not a great team. They're doing it what they did to Mike Trout, where it's just like a superstar, but he's so good that the entire league, the entire baseball world is just watching and waiting for him. And he's kind of has that like Giannis feel, where he's like a little big kid. It's one of those things where I feel like this is just a start. I mean, if he doesn't get hurt, this guy is just going to be continuing to blow up and blow up. He's going to be in the face of everything. And baseball, I mean, is already huge in Japan and in big parts of Asia. But I mean, I think with this guy continuing to excel and do well, he's not just going to be the face of the MLB. He's going to be the face of baseball, and I think that's a fact.
Absolutely. So we're starting to see more and more players adding their personality to the sport, which is not something that, let's say, the older fans of baseball are used to or even a fan of. So guys like Juan Soto, Tatis Jr., EJ, do you think it's about time that this change happens for such an American classic?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, like the whole point that sports analyst Stephen A. Smith said about Otani being, not being able to be the face of the franchise, he kind of took it back and further explained that it's to influence the younger audience. I mean, I love Juan Soto. Obviously, Washington National, Washington National, fun to watch. Helped lead the Nationals to a World Series, right? But he's so entertaining. I mean, even the shuffle he does, if he misses a pitch or, you know, he's just waiting for his pitch, it's so entertaining. And I think, honestly, that's one of the reasons why I started watching baseball after that run that the Nationals did. I got even more into it and understanding, you know, the fandom here is so diverse, and even the players are so diverse that it's not a problem that a non-English speaking person is the face of the league. So to me, let them be who they are. And I'm telling you, I've seen kids already imitating the Soto shuffle after swinging a bat and missing, or waiting for their pitch. So I think it's great. Let them have the personality, and it's going to reflect on the fans' experience with these players when they see them on TV.
Exactly. So change isn't always a bad thing. So let's hope these guys continue to add some flair to this sport. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back, and we're going to talk some UFC and, of course, our question of the week.
Kickoff.
This much is certain. Something is coming. The fact check for the kickoff of the Bundesliga. Who are the favorites? Who should be nervous? And where might surprises be lurking? We dare to look ahead to the new season.
Kickoff.
Welcome back to EBC Sports International. Thanks for sticking with us. So, as reported earlier from ADN, the ongoing rivalry of Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier continued in UFC's lightweight title. In last week's fight, Poirier beat McGregor for the second time in just 6 months within the first round of the fight after McGregor could no longer continue. It was later confirmed that McGregor actually had the broken leg, like ADN said, which required surgery immediately after. And of course, to thicken this plot, it was reported that McGregor entered this fight with various stress factors in his lower leg, making him more prone to this type of injury. And this was all reported to UFC. So ADM, let's start off with you. What does this kind of loss mean for McGregor and his career?
I think when you think about his entire legacy within the sport of mixed martial arts, I don't think it affects it much. He is forever and always will be the greatest star in all of UFC. He's had the biggest draws, the biggest pay-per-view numbers. He's had the most draws, the most attention. He's basically the reason why all the fighters are getting paid so much. So I don't think it will tarnish his legacy one bit. What I do think, though, is that there's legitimate questions about the rest of his career. Can he get to that championship level? Is he on the downslope of his career? Is he going to ever be the top fighter we always thought he could be? And if you look at the past history of the UFC, a lot of stars who have been good for so long eventually lose, and they eventually hit a wall, and that kind of does happen. It's a pattern we've seen with Anderson Silva, other guys who've just been legendary for so long, and then slowly they start to fade. They lose fights, they get injured, or they miss time. Is that what's happening here with McGregor? He's still quite young. He's only 33, so it's really hard to say. I do think he's got a lot of entertaining fights in him left. I do think that he will still be one of the most entertaining guys to watch, but will he be a champion again? I think the question still remains.
No, for sure. So there was a lot of trash talking that came with this fight, like most fights. And assuming this gruesome injury didn't happen, Ken, do you think McGregor had a chance to win this?
I mean, there's always a chance, but I honestly feel like McGregor is kind of, the way that he trained for these last 2 fights was like how Apollo Creed trained for the second fight against Rocky, right? Where he just went on like press press runs, like sold his food, his drinks. And so instead of focusing and having that fire, that desire to win, which he had earlier in his career that people loved, he went more for the clout chasing. He fought Mayweather. I forgot who he fought after that, but then he had really, really long layoffs from the sport. And if you're not in the ring and your opponent is the entire time and they're hungry, then obviously, I mean, you can't just undermine a professional like the way that McGregor undermined Poirier's professionalism. The guy that thought that he's that good. Yes, you're one of the best, but you're not that great that if someone's putting in more time than you, then you can just beat him like that.
No, for sure. And I think it was funny that one of his comments was you're gonna leave in a stretcher to Poirier, and then it turns out he was the one that left in a stretcher. So I thought that was a little bit of it came back to bite you in the butt. But anyways, Jeremy, do you think it looks bad that the UFC allowed this fight to happen? Because again, it was allegedly reported that he had all these injuries prior to the fight, but they still continued on with the fight.
I don't actually. The fact that he was aware should have been his call. UFC, I mean, that's the name of the game, right? They beat each other up until they tap out. So if he didn't tap out on his own, then I don't think UFC's the one to blame. So Conor McGregor made the call. He's the one that still went in the ring, although he told UFC of his ailments. I don't think UFC is the one to blame for this one.
Yeah, and a lot of people are saying, if you knew you were injured, why is your first line of attack to kick this guy? So it's kind of why are you already injuring your leg further? So I'm sure this isn't the end of this rivalry, as many are saying there will be another fight rematch in the future. So moving on to the final part of our show, of course, is the question of the week. So in the spirit of the upcoming free agency, from the panelists, I want to know what trade in whatever league you want to talk about were you most emotionally attached to, elicited the most emotion. So let's start off with you, Ken.
Yeah, so as you guys know, I'm a huge Lakers fan, right? And,
no way.
I wouldn't have known either. But I mean, equal to a Laker fan, this is my favorite player, Shaquille O'Neal, right? So I mean, growing up, loved the guy from Magic, obviously to the Lakers, one of the greatest players ever. And then he went from Lakers to traded to the Heat. I had no problem with that, right? I mean, he won his championship over there, even to the Suns, even to the Cavs. But in 2010, when he signed, it's not a trade technically, but when he signed with the Boston Celtics, that broke a big part of me. I remember, I was still in college at the time, and I was so distraught. I think I was studying, and I heard the news, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go home and turn the lights off, and just thought about it for 2-3 days afterwards. And when I finally saw him on the court wearing the jersey, I was like, I can't believe this. And then when you guys watch Shaqtin' a Fool, even to this day, it's him going, whoa, in his Celtic jersey. I was like, please, just what is happening here? It's really, really, isn't it crazy? To this day, it still really drives my emotions to a really, really sad level. And so
takes you to a dark place, Ken?
Yeah, sure is.
EJ, what about you? Oh no, EJ, you're muted.
Sorry. So actually, for me, it's not actually for the Wizards. It's actually with OKC. OKC trading James Harden for Kevin Martin and Jeremy Lamb, because that spiraled the whole thing. Imagine James Harden never gets traded. He stays on the team, and I think they win championships with Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, James Harden, Serge Ibaka. I mean, maybe Serge Ibaka could have left, but the three of them could have won a championship together. But he gets traded for Kevin Martin. That was downward spiral for Kevin Durant leaving. Now OKC has nobody but a whole bunch of draft picks. I was a fan of OKC with Kevin Durant and those guys, but that trade ruined OKC's future, despite having all these draft picks.
For sure. Jeremy, what about you? These guys are in their fields, so what got you in your fields?
Oh man, I'm gonna go along the lines with EJ and like the whole what if thing. Mine is with CP3. What if he went to the Lakers, to Ken's home team? That whole non-trade, man, I like everyone is just like waiting or wanted to see CP3 playing with the great late Kobe Bryant. Would Kobe have more rings than Jordan? Would CP3 have a ring by now? All those questions, all those what ifs. I think that non-trade, the NBA stopping that, I feel like kind of sticks with me a little bit. But I don't think the NBA wanted Kobe to be Jordan in the amount of rings they had.
Nope.
And what about you, Adian?
You guys might be wondering why I was so riled up about Kawhi Leonard. It's because of that trade. I'm a diehard Spurs fan, and I'm a diehard Raptors fan. It was the most conflicting feeling I've ever felt in my life, I swear. I was happy he brought us a championship. I was sad that he left. I was happy that he brought a championship to the Spurs as well. I was sad that he left. He's the most conflicting man. This is why I talk about him this way. Sorry to say. This man is confusing.
It brings out the best and worst.
I feel like a woman who's scorned for years and years. I'm never going to get over it.
Adrian, now you know how I feel when it comes to Vince and Kawhi. That's why those moves right there, that's my big ones for sure. But well, sorry to end this on a sad note, guys, but hopefully you don't dwell on those what ifs for too long. And that's actually all the time that we have for this week's edition of EBC Sports International. On behalf of everyone on the panel, thank you for joining us this week. Make sure to visit our website, eaglenews.net and eaglenewslive.com. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at EagleNewsPH to join the conversation. For EBC Sports International, I'm Zarita Sese. We live in interesting times.